We'd like to transition now to some presentations that we have around glass recycling. And I hope you learned a lot on the tour of strategic materials and how they process the glass that comes in. Right now, we're going to have a session that talks about glass demand and the economics of glass recycling. Our plan here and the design of the program is to have a variety of speakers in each segment. So they're going to be relatively short presentations. And just to kind of ease the transitions between them, I'm just going to tell you about each of our speakers, and then we'll be doing some passing along the way. But for this first session, again, we're going to talk about glass demand and the economics around glass recycling. First, we're going to have Mary McClellan from the Carolina Recycling Association. She is the executive director there. Next, we will have Matt James from North Carolina DEQ. He is on the recycling and materials management staff with me. Then we'll have Ed Petrell from RDOF, Angus Crane from North American Insulation Manufacturing Association, and then closing out this segment will be Scott DeFi from the Glass Packaging Institute. So I think we have a host of folks that really have a lot of knowledge about this issue, and we hope to learn a lot from everyone. First, Mary.
Thank you. Hello. Oh, hey guys. Hi. Thank you so much for coming. I'm Mary with the CRA, and we are so pleased to partner with Strategic and with North Carolina DEACS on this glass summit. Back in August, Bill approached us at the Resource Recycling Conference and said it's time to talk about glass, and it's time to reinvigorate glass recycling in the Carolinas. And we said, heck yeah, let's do it, because we don't have enough to do. So we were like, yeah, let's do a summit, okay. So anyway, I'm glad you all are here, and I want to point out those of you who are CRA members, it's on your name badge, you can look and see. I want to thank you for your membership in our association. It is one of the legs of the stool that keeps this organization running and able to help and host events like this, including our annual conference, shameless plug, which is coming up in March of 2020 in Raleigh, March 23rd through the 26th. So I do hope to see you all there again as we continue these really important conversations. So thank you for your membership. I would also like to point out our sponsors. Do we have any sponsors in the room? It should be on your badge. I know, yes, Recycling Partnership, Strategic is a CRA sponsor. Republic, I know, is in the room. Yes, Sunoco, Pratt Recycling. We've got a few. If you're a sponsor, please raise your hand and be recognized. Thank you. Oh, Paul Hanna. Thank you. That's the other leg of the stool that keeps CRA from falling over. So thank you all for. On to glass. So I'm only going to say one thing, which is that the CRA, supports glass recycling in the Carolinas. Our mission is to advance waste reduction and recycling in North and South Carolina, and we're sticking to that. But we also support what works for communities, and every community is different. I think you'll hear from our presenters today that there are multiple solutions if you're struggling with glass collection or recycling that you can try. So we are of the opinion of not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We are of the opinion of finding solutions to these challenges that we face with glass, which I know there are many right now. But at the end of the day, recycling glass meets the triple bottom line. It's a package that's not going to go away. It serves a wonderful purpose. It preserves the things it contains in a way that no other package can. Do you want to drink your Merlot out of a plastic bottle? No. So I don't either, and not at all. So, or my beer. No offense to plastic, but containers have a purpose and they're there for a reason, and it's our job to figure out how we can recover those as a resource. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Our next person is Matt James. I just hit this against my tooth.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hello. Like so many people here. You can see me in the back, all right? Cool. I'm only 5'7", so I get worried about that. Yeah, so my name is Matt James. I work for the state's recycling office at DEQ. We have basically three functions. We provide grants to communities and businesses that are looking to expand their recycling collection, recycling equipment, recycling infrastructure. We collect, analyze, manage data about market trends and industry best practices. Probably just turn in your annual reports to us for local governments. Thank you. And finally, we provide technical assistance. We are non-regulatory. We don't get anyone in trouble. We are non-prescriptive. We're not going to tell anyone how to do your operations. But what we can offer is some best practices that have worked elsewhere, and we can help tailor your messaging to optimize what you're trying to do for your community and to optimize how you want your residents to understand your recycling program. So that's what we can offer. So the reason why we care about this graph, I think, frames the problem pretty well. We're closing on, 8 billion people on this planet. We're using up scarce resources at a very fast rate. In North Carolina alone, this graph shows in this orange, the waste disposed in 2017 and 2018 was over 11 million tons in our landfills. The blue line is our population. We have 10 million people in North Carolina. So that means that we're disposing over 1 ton of material per person every single year. The solution to that, we know, is reducing our waste and reusing where possible, and of course, recycling. This graph here just showing that recovery has gone up every year since 2000, and that's largely due to single stream recycling and curbside recycling becoming more prevalent and commonplace. It's easier now than ever and convenient for people to recycle. And a huge percentage of this is glass. Of any one material, glass is easily the heaviest. I mean, fiber, 60%, yes, but that's cardboard, magazines, newspaper, mixed paper. Glass alone makes up 1/5 of all material that is recycled in North Carolina for our traditional materials. Last year, over 130 tons of glass were recycled in North Carolina. That's the most ever. A vast majority of that amount came right here. Didn't go anywhere else. It wasn't shipped overseas to some foreign country half a world away. It didn't get dumped in our oceans. It came to Wilson, North Carolina, and it probably became a bottom of North Carolina too. So in terms of finding domestic markets that work, glass is a great example of something that works right here in North Carolina. Something we should support. So if you're wondering, if you have issues with your recycling program, with your operations, please, you have resources here at Strategic. Give Bill a call, or give us a call. We will provide technical assistance where possible. We can help you get your messaging across to your residents about what you want to do with glass. We have an open grant cycle right now, our community waste reduction and recycling grant. We've decided to up the funding this year as the cost of recycling has grown with some market restrictions. We decided to increase our funding for standard projects to be $30,000 and priority projects at $40,000. Please take advantage of this. Proposals will be due in February on the 20th. You can email myself or Sandy Skolachenko at those 2 email addresses if you have questions, if you'd like to submit a grant proposal. Thanks for your time. I will take questions at the end.
Real quick, one thing I need to mention to you guys is that we are recording this, so be careful what you say. No, I'm just kidding. But we are recording, and we are going to make it available on our website after this. And so, if you have questions from the audience speakers, I would like you to repeat the question closer to this laptop here so that it can be on the recording. Okay, thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Ed Purtle. I'm from Arda Group. I'm the VP of Procurement. So part of that, my team purchases the raw materials, of which cullet is one of the main ones and one of the most important ones. I'll apologize in advance. My slides are a little dry, so if I'll try not to bore you to sleep. But so we've got two glass facilities in North Carolina. We've got Wilson, which is just down the street. We've got about 300 people working there. We make 4 million containers a day, just to kind of get a scope and scale for the speed of which we're creating glass containers. And we have two furnaces using about 750 tons of raw material. And then the other one we've got is Henderson. Again, almost 300 people. Again, two furnaces, slightly smaller, but we're using about 524 tons of raw material. So, yeah, that's a day. So, you know, we can potentially use an awful lot more recycled content. So if anyone tells you that there isn't a market for glass in North Carolina, that's not true. You know, we've got two locations that are more than happy to take it. Now, obviously, we can't take it directly. This is where we need our friends here in Strategic to get that material from, you know, let's say a trash level to a usable level for us. You know, it's important to kind of know that, you know, cullet is a secondary material. It's a secondary, but it's still an input material for us. So it has to meet the same criteria, the same quality standards that we would use for anything else that we're putting into our furnace. You know, our furnaces aren't forgiving. You can't just put any old trash in there. It has to be at a certain level and a certain standard to do it. There's, you know, many different things that can go wrong in that process when it's a secondary material, but it's important to know that. So as has been said before today, you know, glass is a sustainable package. It can be recycled infinitely. You know, if you would take a glass bottle and recycle it, there's no degradation, there's no you know, lack of quality. We can just keep using it over and over again. Theoretically, we could make a glass bottle that would be 90% recycled content. We don't, because it's not there, or there's other challenges. Flint ones typically are a little bit less because to maintain the color is a bit harder, but a green or an amber bottle, we could go up to 90%. It's chemically inert. It doesn't react with whatever is in there. You know, so it is a good place to put your Merlot. I don't know where she's going. You know, and it does reduce energy. It does reduce the need for raw materials. I think I've got some of the facts and figures here, so apologies if this is a little bit boring. If you increase our cullet rate by about 10%, you know, we can reduce our energy requirement by about 2 to 3. If we use a ton of cullet, we can reduce our raw materials by 1 to 1.2. It's written up there as a 1.125. Okay, someone's been very precise. So, you know, it is a great product for us. It is something we absolutely love using. We would love to use more. So again, like I said, there is a market for it. But it's important to remember, it's not magic pixie dust. It doesn't solve all ills. It does come with risks. So for us, you know, it's very important that the quality is right. You know, if cullet can do wondrous things for us in terms of extending the lifetime of our furnace, and it can do horrible things like shortening the life of our furnace. It can save us on energy, but it can also cause problems and cause the furnace to degrade. You know, so kind of flipping back to this one, so, you know, it saves natural resources, it saves pollution, it diverts material from landfill. These are all good things, but I just want to make sure that everyone's aware too that it's important that it goes through the right process before it comes to us. You know, we don't want people rocking up to the glass plant with a trailer full of glass. We won't take it. It needs to go through a process where it's controlled, and, you know, as you guys saw here today, you know, various steps in the process, how the, you know, I hope you don't mind me saying this, guys, the trash at the input turns into a product at the end that looks like glass. You know, you can see at various different stages where, you know, the ferrous has been taken out, the non-ferrous has been taken out, the plastic, the paper, the CSP, the ceramic stones and porcelains, which can cause us problems in our process. So I'll try not to bore you to tears. Unfortunately, I will talk about this all day. So if I'm running over time, someone needs to shepherd with me. So I think there's going to be a Q&A at the end. So I think we can. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Next up is Angus Crane from the Insulation Manufacturing Association.
All right, good afternoon. I want to thank very much Carolina for recycling glass, and you'll understand as I tell this story why we're grateful. NAMA is a trade association. We represent all the manufacturers of fiberglass insulation, including wool insulation, which does not use glass. And we promote the energy efficiency that our insulation products provide. This is essentially a recipe or formula for all fiberglass insulation. The thing about collet, and you see that there's a variation there, it's 35 to 65%. If glass collets were available, we could increase those numbers. So fiberglass makes a lot of different insulation products. We insulate loose fill in attics. We do bats in residential. We have boards, rolls. We insulate ceiling. We insulate appliances. We insulate automobiles. We insulate everything that you can think of. We insulate, and it's kind of the nature of our product enables us to shape and mold. We have pipe insulation, all sorts of different types of insulation. The problem that we are having is that waste management companies are going into different jurisdictions, and because, in my opinion, they don't think they're making enough money on glass, so they try to rewrite the contract, and they will go into a municipality, a city, or some governmental entity, and they'll say, we'll give you a better deal if you will remove glass from the recycling stream. And in order to sell them on that, they misinform them, lie. I don't know what it is, but it's not the truth. They say there is not a market for glass collet. We had that happen with a number of different jurisdictions in Georgia, where we have 3 fiberglass manufacturing plants, all of them using glass collet. So what we're doing is we're actively stepping in and trying to set the record straight. I want to give you an idea of how much glass collet we use. Since 1992, we've been collecting data through a third party to demonstrate the amount of glass that is used both in Canada and the United States. The most recent survey in 2018 showed that we had 2.6 billion pounds of recycled glass. 2.2 billion of that was in the United States, 381 million pounds in Canada. And since 1992, we've had 61.8 million pounds of recycled materials that have been diverted from the waste stream. This is one of the stories I like to tell. And what we try to do when we go into these municipalities is we try to explain to them that we're not just manufacturing insulation products that are environmentally beneficial, but that we provide a lot of jobs, or we pay taxes, we provide revenue for their community, and many of our plants are represented by unions, and those are kind of arguments that we use so that they will listen to us a little more carefully. This is a graph since 1992, and you see that we have increased significantly. There was kind of a dip there in 2008 and 9 and 10, and that was when we were having the building downturn and we're not manufacturing as much. These are the specific numbers. It's probably too small for you to read, but hopefully you'll get copies of these slides. This gives you an indication of where our different manufacturing plants are. What I want you to focus on is the Southeast. Look at how many plants we have in Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and also Florida. We have a big concentration there, and so the glass that you are recycling or enabling us to use is a great benefit to us. So fiberglass is the second largest user of glass collet in North America, and we're also the highest users of the mixed bottle collet, and we are the only manufacturers who actually use the green bottle collet. And so we've got some unique characteristics that enable us to use some glass that others cannot use. Now, by using the glass collet, there are a lot of benefits, and this is similar to what some others have already said, but It reduces the energy needed to extract a lot of the other raw materials. It increases the life of our furnaces by 30%. That life of the furnace is one of the most valuable economic benefits that we have, and so we will always be looking for the opportunity to use more glass cullet because it has significant benefits for us. Also, we have, and this is specifically from the reports that we have, that compared to the 100% raw materials, using 30% glass cullet reduces silica use by 60%, soda ash by 40%, and saves 10% in energy costs. Now, keep in mind that calculation is with 30%. We are using typically 35 to 65%, so those are going to be even higher. Now, I'm going to share this with you because it'll help us to emphasize why glass cullet is so important to us. One of the best messages that we have is that saves energy, and it makes buildings cool in the summer and warm in the winter, and that we save a lot. Important messages that we have is that we have sustainable product. Part of that messaging is that we also have recycled content. Specifically, that's California, and then also EPA has guidelines on how much recycled content needs to be in our product for it to be used in federally funded products. Now, there are some problems if the glass is not clean. It creates all sorts of problems with the melt, and we're unable to use it. Also, glass cullet can result in additional pollutants such as NOx, chromium, and VOCs. Even with that as a side effect, it is still advantageous for us to use the glass cullet. What we tried to do is we tried to create kind of a checklist as to what contaminants are really bad for us and kind of the percentage level of what we can tolerate. This is a specific list of some of the different types of things. These are things that we should never intentionally add. Just to give you an idea of some of the places that we've been, we've gone to the state of Georgia, city of Fayette, Arkansas, Massachusetts. We've had many other places where we've gone in and we've presented testimony. The thing that always amazes me is that we get there and everyone comes up to us afterwards and say, we had no idea that fiberglass used recycled glass. We had no idea that you had plants in our state. So it's important for us to continue to take that message to as many people as we can. And so if you've got a situation where people are challenging the use of recycled glass, we are happy to make the trip to tell this story because it is so important to us. So that's my presentation, and that's my contact information, and I'll answer questions later, right?
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much. We're going to have questions held to the end of the session. We built in a pretty good amount of time at the very end. So please, as you're queuing up some questions, please hold those until the end. Next up, we have Scott DeFife from the Glass Packaging Institute, and would like to turn it over to him as we close out our session on different markets for recycling.
So thank you. I'm Scott DeFife. I'm the new president of the Glass Packaging Institute. I actually started in August, so I'm on month 4 of glass. And to tell you how great glass is, I came over from plastics, right? So, all right, and I'm happy to be back here in North Carolina all the time. My wife is from Raleigh. We come down here all the time. I probably pass the facility multiple times a year coming back and forth for the holidays. I'm going to try to rip through the slides relatively quickly because I'm sure some of my slides are going to replicate some of the slides of some of my colleagues. Of course, ARDA and SMI are both members of the Glass Packaging Institute. The members of the Glass Packaging Institute are the manufacturers of the glass bottles and jars. Okay, so we work with NEMA also on many manufacturing issues within the glass recycling system, but our member companies are the supply chain coming into glass bottles and jars and all of the labels and caps and everything that goes along with glass containers. Okay, so we have 5 member manufacturing companies. I actually have, part of my mission is to get that back up to about 8 or 10 because there's some manufacturing companies operating in the United States that are not members right now. But we have grown, you see the jobs here, and there are 45 plants in 22 states. So again, much like many of the other folks that you've talked about, this is not, it's nationwide, but there's a regional component to it. And because glass, and you've heard about the weight issues and things of that nature, we're focusing in these micro circular economies around the plant so that you get the supply and the production. You have to have the end market to ultimately be successful at doing this. Recycling glass, as the other speakers have talked about, reduces emissions, and we have great consumers like glass. Your constituents like glass. They want to recycle glass. When glass gets dropped from the curbside bin, people hear about it, okay? And I will echo what Angus was saying, is that I've seen it every day. I saw it when I was at plastics before I came to glass, where folks in certain counties, when the contract is up, or even before the contract is up, because of the market mechanisms, you know, they're in the ear of the budget director or the city manager or whoever's controlling things, and say it's a lot easier if you drop glass from your stream instead of having to pay us triple what we were paying you before. But these are temporary market issues that can be corrected, and we're taking the steps to do this. On average, recycled glass in new glass containers is around 32%. EPA's 2017 data just came out a couple weeks ago at the America Recycles Day Summit, and actually glass container recycling was up to nearly 39% in 2017. So we've got to update some of our data, but absolutely recycling the glass is a key component to the production of the new glass. And like I said, 95%. You don't see these scores for other materials. You don't see these scores for consumer action in the community in the 90s and plus. And GPI has had a history of working with Carolina Glass. I want to make sure that I mention that. We've got the manufacturing, RDOT's got the plants here, SMI is here, but OI also has facilities here in North Carolina. And in fact, North Carolina is one of our best glass states. And we tell people that all the time when we're looking for models. North Carolina is absolutely on that list. The grant program that you have and the activity that you've got going here is a model for other states. Now, let's talk about end markets, right? Who doesn't like craft brew, right? Craft beer, right? Well, we like all beer and the Merlot, right? That's right. But there are more than 300 breweries in the state of North Carolina. Those breweries can be putting their product in glass. And as part of the circle, when you keep hearing about this, it's not just the binary thing about is there recycled material available for the glass manufacturing plant. Ultimately, what's going to drive that is more product going into glass, okay? And so we want to work with the Carolina breweries and making sure that they continue to put their product in glass bottles. And it is the highest in the southern United States for that. So that's great. So GPI has taken steps. We have worked in 2016 and 17 to provide grants here in North Carolina to 2 MRFs to improve glass recycling and recovery. I think out of that, I'm still catching up on my history, but out of that effort came the Glass Recycling Coalition, where something similar to that was born with a broader coalition. NEMA and us and SMI are all in that, with a lot of our end market end users are also in the Glass Recycling Coalition, which is doing more grants. And in fact, I think we just did another grant in Orange County, right? So we're happy to do that. And we're going to continue to do that. And in fact, in 2020, we're going to be working on increasing our activity around the country to invest in and help communities that want to continue to recycle glass, invest in equipment and infrastructure. This is some of the equipment that was put in with some of the grants that were supported by GPI. And the 5 to 9% increase in tons of glass recovered from the past couple of years through those investments, and all of the ancillary benefits that come from it. As I mentioned, the Glass Recycling Coalition, we work with that and have grown that. And out of the Glass Recycling Coalition also was born the Glass Recycling Foundation, because we had some people who wanted to make contributions, who needed to contribute to a 501c3, a charitable organization. So we've spun up a new charitable 501c3 glass recycling foundation, of which I sit on the leadership council, and we've just gotten our first couple of grants to the GRF, and we're going to be rolling out a process for applications to make grants to folks that want to invest in glass recycling. And I am also happy to take questions at the end. At the very end. All right, so thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and related to those grant projects that I mentioned, we definitely worked with the Glass Packaging Institute to co-fund those projects. We hear from folks that there is a need for infrastructure improvements along with glass recycling. And so we, of course, put our grant funding on our recycling business side and made that a priority in a few years back, and co-funded some of these projects to help improve the processing capacity at the MRF level in the state of North Carolina. So we were really grateful to have that partnership. It was the very first time that the Glass Packaging Institute were enabled some of that grant funding to come out for investment. So we're real pleased to be continuing that partnership going forward to improve glass infrastructure recycling in the state of North Carolina. So thank you for that. And thank you to all our speakers so far. Thank you for your patience too, because what we do really want to just have a big discussion at the end where we can try to field some of your questions. So we're going to transition to our second set of speakers for this portion and really focus instead of on the bigger picture infrastructure and markets for glass, we're going to talk about collection issues and sort of get some perspective. First up, we're going to have Mike Green from our staff at North Carolina DEACS, who will give a broad overview of glass recycling in North Carolina. We're going to hear from two counties in North Carolina, Caleb Sinclair from Rowan County and Jennifer Krepler from Union County, to talk specifically about their glass collection programs locally. So we'll have that. Then we'll turn towards Bill Clark to give a little more perspective, both from BevCon, which is the hauling arm of Strategic Materials, as well as Strategic Materials, and you'll hear sort of some broader comments about Strategic's process. And last but not least, we will have Patrick McDonald, who's in the back, who is at Sunoco Recycling Facility in Raleigh. So getting perspective from all of those folks. So first up, Mike Green.
Thank you all very much in this microphone. I'd sing a song, but Caleb up next has a much better voice than I do. So coming right off of Scott's presentation, I don't think it could have run any smoother. I think it's a great segue into a lot of the things I'm going to talk about this afternoon. Glass recycling is very important to North Carolina. We have a long standing history of manufacturing with glass. Ardagh plants in Wilson and Henderson, Owens, Illinois, and Lexington, and another one in Danville, Virginia, which is just across the border. Large glass container users in North Carolina. We have food and beverage manufacturers, as well as the growing craft brew industry that everyone just saw the map for. And most importantly, we are the home to one of the most sophisticated glass beneficiation plants in the country. If glass can't work in North Carolina, I don't know where it could. We're just blessed with a lot of resources. So part of the reason it's important, we're definitely wanting to keep things out of the landfill, energy reduction and resource conservation benefits. North Carolina citizens expect to recycle glass. I think we've seen that in several different presentations today. And then, of course, in 2008, there was the law that went into effect that required all on-premises ABC license holders to recycle their beverage containers. So one of the reasons we need to continue to do it, again, I'm going to say it again, residents expect glass recycling. The communities that have removed it, there have been a lot of bad press, a lot of public relations problems, and a lot of them have been flooded with phone calls. So a lot of people drop glass to make the cost go away. The cost doesn't go away, the cost is moved. That tonnage, if you're not recycling it somewhere, that tonnage is going back into your solid waste stream. A lot of the solutions that I'm hearing are people saying, well, let me get a glass crusher and I'll crush it myself. A lot of the problem with that, the equipment is so costly. People will buy the wrong size machinery, not expecting how much they're going to get. They run behind with it. The machinery is constantly breaking down. So they would have been better off paying for it in the recycling than they would have been to try and crush it themselves. A lot of people a lot of the communities have come to us and say, well, I'm just going to turn it into landfill cover. The problem is with that thinking is landfill cover still requires clean glass. The stuff that was problematic going to your MRF is still going to be problematic trying to turn that into landfill cover. So from North Carolina DEACS perspective, we do suggest that we keep the glass in your single stream curbside recycling. It does lead to higher participation. The tonnages are higher. And as you can see from the presentations earlier, everyone is saying that we still need more glass in North Carolina. Another thing to think about, a lot of the problem with cost is contamination. There's another road you may want to try working with us to let us work with your overall education program to see if we can improve the quality of your recyclables in general that may make the glass in a little more affordable. If you must remove it from your system, we do understand some communities have had to do that. We really want you to offer your residents an alternative to have a drop-off option available for them. I think a lot of communities are kind of nervous if they're dropping it. You know, they don't want to talk to us because it's like, well, they're just going to get mad and not help us out. We still want to help you. If you are trying to recycle it, there are different ways to do it. We definitely want to try and help you. There's education strategies we can help you with. We can hook you up with Bill. He's great to work with. There are lots of different options. We have grants available. You saw Matt talk about those earlier. Give us a call and let us try and work out a system for you if you are going to a drop-off only method. So another thing, if you are going to drop it from your single stream, get the message out early and stay on top of it. Be sure it's not just we're dropping glass and that's the end of it. If you are going to do that, be sure you're telling them this is the alternative. This is the drop-off location that we have going for you. As far as the messaging with the public, I was talking with Mel, our education specialist, who had been on the front end of a lot of this. And a lot of the residents are confused if you are going to a drop-off system for glass. Why is it being taken out of my curbside? And the message that they seem to understand the most is that it's a matter of contamination. We're trying to get everything cleaner so that it improves the quality of the recyclables. So definitely prepare for a strong reaction. Like I said, the papers will blow up, the phones will blow up. And stay consistent with your messaging and own your decision. But most importantly, keep it on curbside. Let's try and find solutions to keep it in your single stream. That's my information.
Next up, we have Caleb Sinclair from Rowan County.
Yes. How are you? Matt called and said, could you come speak briefly and just give a snapshot of your glass program? So I'm Caleb Sinclair again. I'm a solid waste director for Rowan County. Our program looks like this. The county operates landfill. We also have 8 solid waste and recycling convenience centers throughout the county. We got in the convenience center business many, many years ago. Our centers were born from a need for a place to put garbage. So we established these staff centers to keep garbage from our former model, which was just to put cans out throughout the world, 8 yards, and you know how that didn't work. This was, again, before my time. So now we have 8 strong, staffed. We benefit our folks. You know, it's a costly endeavor, but what we get for that investment are clean materials. So we're recycling the low-hanging fruit stuffs, and glass has always been a part of our model. So again, early on, we were separating clear and color and brown and other colored glass. We would load that, we would haul that to a consolidated point at our landfill facility, where then we would stage, and we're doing this in a cart-based system, so hugely labor intensive, not a smart way to do it, but we would handle this stuff 10 times, consolidate it into 40-yard roll-offs, and then drive from our Rowan County home to a vendor out, I think, in Winston-Salem. So the numbers didn't work, super costly. Our goal was to do the right thing and get the glass recycled. That didn't work. All this before my time as well. So when I entered the picture, we were still collecting glass the same way in our cart system, separating the colors, and then we would end up consolidating that glass back at our landfill facility where we would repurpose it for landfill ops and not getting that glass to market. I got a phone call one day years ago from Bill Clark. He introduced himself, said, I'd really like to come to your county and take a peek at your glass. So we made a date. One of our flagship convenience centers is a 6-day operation, 7A to 7P, Monday through Saturday. We decided to meet there. At this point, I had consolidated our collections as much as I could into 30-yard roll-off containers, co-mingled the colors of the glass, but still we have very clean co-mingled coloration glass collection with no industry destination. So at this point, I meet Bill at our site. We stroll over to this open top 30-yard, and he peeks in, and Bill's got a glimmer in his eye all the time, but this particular day, he saw the glass and his twinkle got a little brighter. He said, I really want your glass. You have beautiful glass. And I never thought of it that way. It's all trash to me, man. So I'm not even, so I don't know how well you can see this, but this is a recent pic of our glass in a 30-yard. We have various signage from the basic to the beautiful. That's a graphic we got from DEACS. We've learned to rely on DEACS heavily for their guidance and their resources, and I think that picture was from you guys. So again, it's hard to see, but we have beautiful glass. Where's Bill? It's beautiful glass, isn't it?
I'm more worried about that where you made a date statement.
So that's where we were, and still, of course, the transportation costs. We were in an industry hiccup at the time, and we didn't get together at that time, that first meeting on our glass, because the industry changed. There was some changing of the guard within the companies that Bill was working with, and so for a couple of years, we went back to our old way, not getting this glass to market. We've been in contact since then, trying to hammer out a solution, and because of Bill's tenacity, and we got there. And here's how. Bill proposed that if we could build a bunker or have a consolidated point for our glass, and he could have a tipping point for ABC bar collection glass, and we would commit to load that glass, that we could get this to market, to the marketplace, to the processor. So that's what we've done. We took some old infrastructure, we added some bunker blocks at a relatively negligible cost, and it takes us about 25 minutes to load a truck. We're loading a truck every other week, every 2 weeks about. We're loading the truck for them. There we go, load trucks. So it's a low rent, easy operation. We already have the infrastructure, and it's cost effective for us. and we're getting that glass to the marketplace. So we average about 60 tons a month, and this glass professionals will tell you all the other great things that have about why getting this glass to the marketplace is important. That's a snapshot of a ground level county operation. If you have any questions on maybe how we can make that model work for you, or just have a brainstorming session, let's do it. So, thanks.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Next up, we have Jennifer Crumpler from Union County.
Well, Bill, I'm jealous. You never told us we had beautiful glass. That's okay. That's okay. Well, I'm from Union County, and thank you. We started recycling glass. We still are dual stream. We took out our glass and worked with Bill, and it's going strong, and we're doing wonderful. So, well, we are on the map. If you haven't heard of Union County, we are very close to Charlotte. And this is a little bit of background information. We are an enterprise fund. We operate our business like our pay-as-you-throw program. We are populated about 235,000. We have 14 towns in our dual stream recycling program. Watauga County, we have 5 that are up and currently running, but we have relocated one site, the Sun Valley convenience site, which is going to be relocating to a gold mine convenience site. And all of our convenience sites take glass, bottles and jars. Okay, well, here's our program. In the beginning, we started in December of 2015, so it's been 4 years. And our challenge was we were separating our cans and bottles and glass, or dual stream, and then paper and cardboard. Well, we had the a call from Sunoco was saying, okay, your commingle containers just has way too much glass. We were about 60% glass. So we reached out to Bill and Sunoco, and we sort of partnered together and said, well, we're going to take this on. And we took it over. We said, we'll take out glass, and we did. So we've recycled 1,000 tons so far, and we're just saving energy and saving our landfill space. So that's it.
Thank you, Jennifer. So the two similarities with the programs that you've heard from today are convenience center-based drop-off programs for glass, and they're both separating that glass separately, so collecting it separately so that it doesn't go in with the other material. So thank you both for that. Patrick McDonald from Sunoco Recycling. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Patrick McDonald. I'm with Sunoco, and we're happy to be here today to discuss some of the issues related to glass processing from the perspective of a MRF operator. First off, a bit about Sunoco. We operate a number of facilities in the Southeast, very strong presence in the Carolinas. Our flagship MRF is located in Raleigh. We've operated that particular facility since 2006, and we process a number of recycling for a number of municipal and private collectors in our area of the state. Like a lot of MRFs, we've had to adapt to some of the unique challenges posed by glass in our systems. And when we talk about glass, for context, and this number can vary regionally, but in our particular area, glass is about 20 to 25% of the overall single stream by weight. So that's a significant chunk of the single stream. At a MRF like ours, that equates to roughly 2,500 tons per month of crushed glass, or about 125 truckloads. So it's pretty significant. So some of the challenges that we face. First and foremost, I would say maintenance and equipment issues. So just due to the abrasive nature of glass, it has a tendency to essentially destroy over time just about everything it touches. So whether that's a concrete tip floor, rubber conveyor belts, steel frames of conveyors, just think about everything that you find in the MRF. Glass just eats through that stuff over time. And it's a pretty significant cost impact. Another issue would be quality concerns for our other commodities. So obviously we're in a hypersensitive kind of market condition right now as it relates to quality of our finished products. So this is complicated things. So when I say quality issues, think about cross-contamination. So glass can become embedded in newspaper and cardboard. Think about it becoming embedded, for instance, in a PET water bottle. So those types of things cause issues for our end users, which in turn cause issues for us. So we've had to address that as well. And finally, beyond some of the expenses, the maintenance and equipment issues that I've referenced, there's just a negative cost associated with glass. So most MRFs, and we're no different, pay processors like Strategic a tip fee. Now that number can vary. It's basically just a function of the quality of glass that we send out. But at present, that's a negative cost item for us. I don't know how well these will come across with the light, but this is a picture of our tip floor at our Raleigh facility. So I think it was 2014 we replaced that tip floor. It was about a $250,000 project. And you can see we've got some pretty significant degradation there to the point that we're having to replace that 5 years in. So just as an example, some of the wear items wouldn't come across so well in photos, like a rubber conveyor belt. I thought this might be a good example. So what are we doing? What have we done to address some of these things? For those that aren't familiar with how a MRF operates in terms of the glass, glass is typically removed or separated from the rest of the material through a glass breaker or a glass crusher. In the original layout of our MRF in Raleigh, that component was located pretty well in the center of the process flow. So a couple of years ago, we undertook a project to really accomplish two things. One was to add to the surface area of that glass breaker. That will allow us to drive more glass out of the material flow, out of the single stream. But also we relocated it to the front end of the system, or as close as we could get anyway, thereby minimizing the amount of equipment, but also the amount of other commodities that material or that glass interacted with. So the result was less wear and tear on the equipment, and also fewer opportunities for that cross-contamination with our other commodities. Another project that we tackled, so I mentioned earlier our tip fee. It's basically a function of the usable glass that we send to a processor like Strategic. When I say usable glass, there's certain size of glass that they're looking for, right? If it's too small, it's what we call glass fines. It's not very useful to them. So in consultation with Bill and Strategic, about 1.5 years ago, I think it was, we undertook a project to add a glass trommel to our system, to our glass cleanup system. And what the trommel allows us to do is to pull out, not all, but a good percentage of the glass fines. That's material that processors don't want, problematic for processors. So we can pull that out of the stream and instead direct that. In our case, we send it to a local C&D landfill to be used as beneficial reuse. We can also pull some of what's called the NGR, or non-glass residue, out of the stream. That's things like, it could be anything. It's trash, it's contamination. It's non-glass residue. So it could be small pieces of plastic, aluminum, metal, rocks, ceramics, things like that. We can pull a lot of that out as well with the trommel and direct that material where it needs to go, which is not to a glass processor. I will mention there was good discussion earlier, or presentations about some of the granting in those programs. So both of these projects were recipients of grants from NCDEQ. In the case of the first project, where we added to and relocated our glass breaker deck, that was partially funded with a grant from Glass Packaging Institute. So I wanted to mention that both of those projects served as a good illustration of some of the collaboration and partnership between industry, public, and private sector. So again, I don't know how well these will come across, but these are the components that I mentioned earlier, so of the equipment. So on the left, that's a glass breaker deck. And essentially, that's just crushing the glass, getting it out of the system. So in theory, the glass is going to fall in between those shafts, which I'm not sure if you can see, and all of the other material will go over the top to the next component in the MRF. The material that does fall through those gaps in the shafts will then be directed to the trommel. That's the new device that we installed about 1.5 years ago. And that's the component that allows us to achieve that separation what's called the MRF mixed glass, which is material that processors want from the fines and the NGR, the residue. So these pictures may look the same. They look a lot different to me, maybe to Bill. But on the left, that's what we call MRF mixed glass. So that's generally the correct size that processors like Strategic are looking for. Hopefully it's relatively free of contamination, but hopefully you can draw a comparison or a distinction between the pile on the right. That's the glass fines pile. So that's the material that the trauma has pulled out that previously was going to processors like Strategic, mixed into the pile on the left, which was causing issues for them. So we're instead now directing that to, as I said, to a C&D landfill for beneficial reuse. Having said that, these projects were all very helpful. I know there was some discussion earlier about some municipalities, some MRFs and programs starting to exclude glass. And that's partly why, right? There's tremendous cost associated with that, be it in terms of the tip fee or just the wear and tear on the equipment, kind of the burden of the plant from an operating level. Our approach at Sunoco would be, we don't want to make that decision, right? We'd rather continue to provide that operating capacity for programs or municipalities that wish to continue to include glass in their programs. We'll offer differential pricing. So we'll offer a pricing structure with and without glass. But ultimately, we want to leave that decision up to the supply. And as I said, continue to maintain that operating capacity for those that want to use it. Bill, I think we're going to do questions now. And then, okay. All right. That's it.
I am Bill Clark from Strategic Materials, one of your hosts here today. I look out on the crowd and I know most of you. I've been here in North Carolina for over 12 years, working with the various communities, working with the waste haulers, working with the MRFs, and thank you all for coming today. Before I go too far, my primary role in North Carolina is changing. I will be assisting the new supply manager in North Carolina as he gets started and takes over my role that I've had here for the last 12 years. Tom, could you come up for just a second so people can see your pretty face? Tom Sire, formerly was with Waste Management, formerly United States Marine Corps. We want to talk a little bit about Strategic Materials. We have 47 plants in the United States. Our plants are focused on our customers' needs. Each plant manufactures to a customer specification. Sorry. We make industrial raw material. We're a manufacturer. People like to say, send it to that glass recycler in Wilson. We're a manufacturer. We manufacture to customer specifications. Those customers are glass container customers, our DAW, fiberglass customers, reflective beads. Everyone wore a yellow vest today. You know what makes them reflective? Recycled glass. Okay, we also manufacture a line of abrasives. Our raw material is your recycled glass. We need your recycled glass. Demand for recycled glass is higher than the available supply. We need your glass. Again, glass containers, fiberglass, reflective beads, abrasives. You've heard about that demand today from people that are very knowledgeable, whose entire careers have been spent in those industries. You've heard quality mentioned numerous times. We pay for quality, okay? Non-glass residue. It's not glass, we don't pay for it. Undersized particles. We talked about that, Patrick spoke about that. We can't pay for that. We pay for quality material on the way in. I hope everyone saw the sampling and the testing. Every load that comes into this plant is sampled and tested and recorded so that we can pay the proper amount for that material. There's a lot of technology here. I hope you have an appreciation for that. We've got crushers, we've got screens, we've got vacuums and blowers and magnets and eddy currents and optical sortation equipment. To recreate this plant probably is $30 million. I frequently compete with folks in your lobbies. Gentlemen that look like me, they got the name on their shirt. But you know what? They go home and they sit in their living room with their computer and they line up a truck to go from here so that they can pick up your stuff and move it over there, and they make money without doing any work, without having brick and mortar behind them like we have here. We are physically in North Carolina. We've spent millions of dollars to be here. Let's talk a little bit about collection systems. And Jennifer and Caleb, thank you so much for highlighting your programs. But every program is slightly different. This isn't a one-size-fits-all type of thing. Everybody's logistics to Wilson is a little different. Material quality, the volume of your material. You may have to store it a little bit longer to get a full truckload. The quality of them, you know, I was working on the pick line, which used to be the pre-processing line that y'all saw today. And as I'm standing there, here comes a bowling ball. Someone thought a bowling ball was glass and put it in with their glass recycling. And many of you have heard me say, we want glass, we don't want your dead cats and mattresses. Okay, but we get it all coming in the door, and most of you are smiling saying, yeah, I've seen that stuff. Okay, MRF processing is a consideration today. There's a lot of MRFs that are charging a little bit more if you keep glass in. They're advocating taking glass out. You know, Sunoco is a wonderful partner to us. We've had a terrific relationship, but they're a business and we're a business. Okay, we're protecting our turfs. As those processes and costs are pushed back, I have seen folks that just say, oh, throw your trash, your glass in the trash. Don't do that. Call us. We can figure this out. Jennifer called me. We figured it out. Caleb called me. It took us 3 years, but we figured it out. Okay. What we do, we look at the available assets. Hey, you got concrete. You got storage sites. You got bunker blocks. You got convenience sites. Hey, we can use bins and roll-offs. And hey, you have the ability to load a truck, and you've got personnel that can help. A lot of times you don't realize how lucky you are to have those facilities available to you. And a third party looking at them can help you arrange that so that you can continue your operation and recycle glass. Residential acceptance. I think I put this in different words than you heard before, but residential acceptance, man, if you take glass out, your phone is gonna ring. Residents want to recycle glass. Glass is one of the true iconic recyclables that's out there. And the state wants to give you money. They want to give you grants to help you get started. We have to make every program a win-win-win. In order for any program to sustain itself, the municipality, strategic materials, and our industries all have to win. Every municipal program, every MRF program, every collections program, every customer processing program is different. There's not one size that fits all. Each program requires focus on those existing assets to create a win-win-win for everyone involved. Our whole recycling world is evolving. It's not going to be the same as it was 5 years ago. It's not going to be the same as it was yesterday, and it's going to be different tomorrow. But strategic materials will provide leadership in every facet of glass recycling, whether it's collections or processing or bar and restaurant programs, promotions to your residential and commercial customers. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Bill, for both hosting us and for your comments. I just want to turn our attention, to some question and answer session, and I appreciate y'all's patience. I think if I were to do it over again, I'd take a little break in between and the two sets of presentations, and let's have some questions. So hopefully y'all have held your ideas so that we can talk about it now. But as we do that, just kind of reflecting on what I heard from the presentations, certainly glass is a very important part of our material stream that is highly recyclable. There are investments in North Carolina to get that glass recycled into new products and a whole array of products. So we've heard from a lot of different manufacturers, lots of investments that have been made in North Carolina and South Carolina as well. So I think our challenge is to try to figure out, how we can work through the pieces of the system that still remain challenging. And I want to talk together with you all about those questions and see if we can have some of our experts in the room speak to that. So I would invite all the speakers who have you don't necessarily have to come up, but as folks have questions, we want to repeat those back out and have you address those as well. So I've asked Sandy Skolachenko from my staff to also help me facilitate this. Of course, Mary from CRA can help as well as we have questions. So without further ado, what questions do you have for some of the speakers that you've heard, and what can we do to answer those questions? Okay, right here in the middle. Joe Hack. Great question, Joe. So Joe Hack from Mecklenburg County asked, what is the state of North Carolina doing to help invest in the value of the other commodities in the single stream recycling residential stream to help offset other costly factors? The state of North Carolina is working, as we always have, to recruit new businesses to North Carolina, to expand the existing businesses that are here that provide that marketplace. So we have a team, the Recycling Business Assistance Center team, that are doing that work every day. We have the business-focused grant projects that we focus that work on. Over the last couple of years, we have targeted that funding specifically to projects that are addressing the materials that have been banned from international markets. So we work to do that on the market development side. In addition, we work really hard to try to get contamination down. So, I think many of you in the room already know how much we've been working to promote Recycle Right and See, which is the new campaign that we established to get better messaging out about recycling, what can be recycled, what shouldn't go in the bin in the first place. So we've been really working hard to get those cost issues controlled related to contamination, get contamination down. Any other staff members want to add to that? She says that's good. All right. Yes, and next to you.
I've got so many questions. I'll follow up after.
Great.
But if I can get a quick one. Is there documentation on the cost when you cancel glass from your city Green Street? Could we get some hard numbers on that if possible? And last question for you. The DEC provide grants if the city wanted to revert back to
There's a lot of questions in there. So the first, I think, is related to documentation of cost issue and cost comparisons. Yes, absolutely, we can work on that. So in fact, there have been communities that have called us or let us know that they were trying to consider what program options they might have available to them. And we sent, in fact, Sandy Skolachenko went down to one of those communities and worked with them to walk through some cost comparisons on that. So we can do that on an individual basis. We can also run some numbers on a larger scale from all that data that y'all submit on the local government annual reports. Super valuable, by the way. Thank you for doing all of that. We work to use that data set and do as much analysis work as possible, so we can pull some information there. Sandy, do you want to talk about that particular project?
About glass, when you worked with the
individual? Yeah, so what we usually do is, of course, it all depends on your community. Transportation costs are very specific to your community, what your landfill tipping fees are, where these different materials are going. So typically what we do is go sit down, have a one-on-one meeting, talk about their full cost analysis that they already have and figure out, you know, where these streams are going, what the associated cost elements are, and then do some scenarios of if you keep glass in the curbside mix versus if you pull it out and manage it a different way or send it to landfill. So it's a lot easier to do that one-on-one with each community, but we're more than happy to do that. And if you're interested in some, you know, kind of bigger picture numbers, let's talk and we can figure out what kind of data we have to share.
I think the last piece of your question, which I don't want to completely ignore, but I will be somewhat vague. So the question was, does the state of North Carolina DEQ, would we put grant funding towards a dual stream, transitioning back to dual stream? The issue is complicated. I mean, we certainly want to work with each individual community to figure out what works best for your community. By and large, we would say dual stream is not always the best answer, and we would be particularly cautious about recommending that or certainly putting funding towards it. But certainly we we'll, you know, work with communities. If that's the idea on the table, we'll certainly help with that cost analysis and decide with you, you know, whether that is something that makes sense on an individual basis. So, Bob Holden.
Great chance that the state would go for all of it. We'll push that.
Okay, so the question, Bob Holden from the town of Cary. I'm quoting Bob Holden from the town of Cary. Asked about bottle bills in North Carolina, and that is in the past been a very thorny subject politically, and in the state of North Carolina that's been proposed many times, not recently, but and has in the past always been shot down. It has not been an option politically. Folks have not been willing to go that route. So I don't want to say never say never. You know, it's certainly an option, and I think Bill might be able to speak to the quality of glass that comes from bottle bill states. So no, it's good. I think that's a thumbs up. You might imagine. I will say from a bigger perspective, careful what you wish for. So there will be, if a bottle bill were to pass in North Carolina or any other non-bottle bill state and transition to that, it would be a major disruptor to the system. You know, how would those containers then be collected? Where does that collection infrastructure then fall? We've already been heavily invested in North Carolina in the systems that we already have. So the implementation of a new bottle bill would not go without problems, I would imagine, to transition into that. And it takes material out of the stream that are heading towards our MRFs. Sounds like, I think Blair has a comment from Orange County.
Mostly for our industry folks. I heard you say loud and clear that there's a large unmet demand for more color. And I've heard Bill say relatively recently that the most that could be paid here is $20 a ton. And after that, manufacturers switch back to the sand, limestone, soda ash mix. So I know from recent experience, it costs me more than $20 a ton to get glass to strategic. And if you're going to continue to go California route, federal government route, and push the demand higher, is there any opportunity to look at premium prices for more recycled content materials?
I'm going to repeat the question real quick for our online folks, and I'm sure I won't do it justice, Blair. I'm sorry. I'm going to summarize. Basically, the question is related to pricing for the commodities, and the market folks in the room have mentioned how there's a demand for an unmet demand even for glass cullet. And so at what point, are there market signals that can be placed on that? So I'm going to pass.
If you didn't guess, I'm the general counsel and I'm the lawyer for the association. And that kind of question is the reason I show up. I understand your motive, and it is a pure motive, but because we are competitors and we are governed by antitrust laws, that discussion would be very difficult to have. It would be probably illegal for us to come to any agreement on that. So truly, that is the reason I'm here, because those kind of questions always come up. So does that answer your question? I mean, it's not a good answer, but it's nonetheless the reality. It's the reality of our lives.
I'm deferring to my lawyer. No, I mean, he's right. It's very difficult to, and I would say that each plant
First, I said I was deferring to my lawyer.
Yeah.
I'm behind you.
I'm the advice of counsel, not answering.
No, I think it's hard for trade associations and groups like that to have these kinds of conversations. We're really not supposed to be doing price setting kind of influencing kind of activity. I think it's important to register plant to plant supply chains for each plant. Some of that pricing may vary from overall. I think the general point that we're trying to make is that glass container manufacturers can use more color, right? And the more that we can get that's a good quality, if the quality goes high and it's more prevalent, the price of that can come down to the point where more of it can get used and is price competitive with the raw materials. I think that's the best answer I can give right now.
Yeah, no, I think you got it. And you know, the point that Scott's also making is geography plays a huge part in it. Geography plays a huge part in it. So some raw materials, depending on where we are in the country, are traveling a long distance. So that works in the favor of the recycled content if you're close to the plant, and conversely in other locations. So I feel your pain. I put it that way. But unfortunately, you know, we're running a business too, and we have to make the economic decisions that make sense for our business. You know, we would all love to be running 90% recycled content, but you know, unfortunately, at the moment in North America, glass demand has actually been contracting and decreasing. So I don't know if you guys have been following it, but over the last few years, quite a number of furnaces have actually closed in North America. So you know, we are under quite a lot of competitive challenges. So you know, the competitor of recycled content is actually the raw material, and it does depend a lot on the geography. So yeah, we can't kind of get into specifics. It's the wrong, you know, it's a forum we can't do it in. Thank you, council. But it is a real concern, and it's a challenge that I think we all have to work together to try and come to a way that, you know, it's coming out of your guys at the highest quality, the most economic, so that the guys in strategic can use it. and get it to a point that we can use it in the most economical way too, because the worse quality that arrives at these guys' front door, the more work they have to do to make it good enough for us to put it in our furnace. And the more work that takes, it's all adding up the cost and making it, not competitive. I don't know if that helps. I don't know if that helps or not.
We got a question in the back. I'll get to you, Teresa. Just to tag on to that real quickly, though, I will say that, that is one of the reasons why, our office has been working so hard to really help with messaging around recycling and trying to help get that contamination down in the waste stream or in our material stream for recycling, because it all has an impact on the overall cost structure. And the more contamination that comes through the MRF level, for example, the harder it is to get each individual commodity clean enough for end market. So, the better we can do to send them, even if it's still mixed to our MRFs, the less trash it has in or non-recyclable items, the better in quality we can get to the markets that you see here today. The other point I wanted to make is, even though you may have seen that there are some furnaces closing down for, in North America across for recycled cullet and glass manufacturing, the one exception to that is actually Ardagh right here in Wilson has rebuilt one of their major furnaces, and that was a major investment that was made in North Carolina for glass. And that's something that I think that everyone needs to remember, that they have committed to that by that investment alone. And so that was a really important piece for maintaining that recycling infrastructure right here in this state. So let us not forget that those millions of dollars that have gone into that, and trying to make sure that we can get the quality material to market to support that. Teresa, you had a question in the back. Yeah. I'm not sure I can repeat that. All right, so let me see if I can try. Teresa Baker from Granville County asks about the ABC law in North Carolina that Mike Green referenced earlier in the presentations. And I think I understood her to say, asking, why couldn't those customers then pay more for the recycling piece of that? And I would say they do. They pay, not the customers. What's the question then? I think there's probably a disconnect here. So I don't think the ABC Commission is necessarily making a lot of money on this, but on that. But the second piece of that, we really should be clear. It's not the ABC Commission that instituted the law. It was our state legislators that enabled that law and passed that law to then require these folks who own the license to have this program. So that's kind of going around, and maybe the question is more about the state of North Carolina. Why doesn't the state put it behind it? And that I would have to defer you to our legislators, around that, because we only have so much funding. And I actually see my old colleague nodding earlier. Did you have something to add, Rob, on that issue?
I mean, I think that the ABC material.
Sorry to call you out, Rob.
Hi, my name's Rob Taylor, and I'll just observe that in many cases, ABC generators are bearing that cost. They're bearing that cost by paying for the collection and hauling of that material and delivering it to mostly through MRFs to a recycling market. And I'll hand this to you in just a second. But in other cases, communities are bearing that cost by providing access to recycling services to the ABC generators in their communities. So whether they get to use your drop-off sites or whether you're letting them use your public recycling system, you're bearing that cost for them, presumably collecting revenue in some way to help run that system. And so I'll hand to Bill and then disappear.
As you entered the building today, you may have seen a truck outside. It says BevCon on the side of it. Strategic Materials owns a beverage container recycling company that goes to bars and restaurants, which by law are required to recycle their beverage containers. BevCon picks those up and we charge people for that. Okay, there is a price being paid for that, Teresa. The bars and restaurants bear that price, and we recycle the beverage containers. Beverage containers at a bar and restaurant includes aluminum, plastic, and glass, but you saw our pre-processing line here today where we can extract the aluminum and the plastic and forward it to peer processors for recycling. That was our commercial moment.
Okay. Mary from CRA.
Thank you. Teresa, I think I'm feeling your question is about extended producer responsibility. And why, Teresa's asking, why don't the manufacturers of bottles who are creating a package that we now have to pay a lot to handle, why aren't they contributing at the front end to help pay for the disposal? Is that what you're asking? Okay, got you. What's the disconnect? We are the disconnect. Okay, anything you want to see happen politically, it starts right here. So if there's a solution, to this that is legislative or policy, Wendy can't talk about that. But we as a group are the ones responsible for that. And there's lots of resources and research that can help us make the right decision, including CRA. That's what we're here for, and in part is to try to forward policies that work or advocate for policies that work to make recycling better, like EPR, like bottle bills. But where it starts is interest and motivation from us. So that's what I would answer to that. The disconnect would be us. So if we can change that, you just give me a call. Okay.
All right, what other questions do we have? Yeah, right. Thank you. Yes, and right here.
Yeah, I just wanted to. The industry takes the program, and what people are saying, the product stewardship, and where the industry or companies pay for the cities to continue and their programs as we mentioned.
Yeah, so producer responsibility can have many different phases. I see your point. Yes, that's right. Yes, in the back, in the yellow. All right, the question is about how important or not important is it to separate glass by color?
Clear glass is worth more money than mixed color glass. Typically what happens though at convenience sites, in order to get the volume to make the logistics work, you cannot afford to separate it. Convenience site will make a shipment of 22 tons in a truck once every 6 weeks. But if you take 45% of the glass is clear and you begin to separate it by color, then you're making a shipment every 3 months. I don't know about you guys, but old beer doesn't smell good after 3 months. Okay, so there's some associated problems. So I generally advocate to put all the glass in one container and ship it as mixed color because your routine shipments are there.
Without stealing Bill's thunder either, the other side of it is if it's incoming as a single stream, it needs a different type of process than if it's mixed. So the infrastructure of the site like here would be different. So even if the volume was there, you'd have structured the plant slightly differently because you wouldn't have to do as much color separation as you do now. So, you know, if you put in a single stream input into a plant that's built for a multi-stream 3-color input, you've got a lot of machines that aren't doing a whole pile of work because they don't need to anymore. So it isn't the best use of your capex either. So there's two ends to it, but I think the logistics is probably the stronger argument. But if the logistics worked and the volume was there, these guys would have built the plant in a different way. If that makes sense. Thank you. Ms. Farrell.
Olivia from Chapel Hill. I'm just curious, we talked about 100% recyclability, but the place on brand recommends 90% in a bottle. Can you clarify why other inputs?
All right, so the question for the folks online, by the way, I'm repeating this not only for the folks in the back, but there's some folks online that we're recording this for. The question is about recyclability, which I think is a little bit different than the recycled content that is allowed in each container. So, but the question is, can you get above 90% of recycled content in a glass bottle, and recyclability about?
So every bottle is 100% recyclable. You can recycle the whole bottle, but in terms of content, you do reach a kind of a limit, and it is usually in the low 90s. Typically because you're getting a secondary material, and it can be only controlled to a certain degree, right? So you're going to have certain specifications of color, etc., that you want to maintain for your customer. You want that Budweiser bottle to have that kind of distinct amber color. You want that Flint bottle that you're buying your vodka in to be, pristinely clear, right? You don't want it to be kind of slightly brown, right? Right. And so, you want to have that color maintained. So you need to allow some degree of scope for the raw materials to kind of allow you to play with it. And I'm not going to pretend to be a glass chemist, but there's certain things that you can add and take out to kind of get that color to where you want it to be. So you need to just leave a little bit of space in there for it. So I think that the highest that I've ever seen is was kind of 92, 93. Once you start getting above that, you're really on the edge. But yeah, it is achievable. Typically on the green and the amber type colors, for the Flints, it tends to be lower because again, you want to try and keep that color, and it's the hardest one because clearly you can see right through it. So it does. But so yeah, we can recycle every bottle 100%, but the content is 90-ish.
Other questions? Oh, we have a follow-up.
Just to give you an explanation, like on fiberglass, if you looked at the list of ingredients that I had, one of the ingredients was a binder, which is the thing that binds the fibers together so that they can create a product. We also had on that list borates. The borates are what enable the fibers to actually be flexible and be bended and shaped So there are a couple of those ingredients that cannot be substituted by a glass cullet. So we would never be able to go to 100%.
Thank you for that clarification. Other questions? Joe Hack, Mecklenburg. So the state does not typically pay for ongoing sort of processing costs. Is that your question? So yeah, yes. So we would not typically do that because we don't see that as sustainable. In part, you know, our funding is fully dependent on our legislative appropriations each year. So we certainly wouldn't want to get in a situation where our localities all across the state are depending on the state funding to maintain their programs. So that would be a really risky venture, number one. Secondly, we really do like to invest in equipment that can be maintained after the life of the grant project itself. So sorry, no. But we will help you make program improvements on any kind of infrastructure equipment, as you well know, Joe, and others. You know, we're more than willing to work with communities and businesses as they work to expand their recycling capacity or improve their processing to enable them to, you know, do a better job with that. Also, on that education piece, we certainly work, especially with communities, to help fund education programs to get that message out there. Yes, sir. In the front. Sure. Sure.
Al Cablay, I'm with the City of Burlington, and I think I'll just ask the question that is kind of looming for some of the cities, and that is we're seeing the glass starting to appear, right, in our waste stream. It's not recycled. We're seeing it. Okay, and the message that we're trying to struggle with is what do we do with this glass now? And cities are going to need help on what to do. This is a kind of it's a little eye-opening for us, which is great, but there's a huge disconnect to the people that we serve out there. Trying to get this glass, you know, to you all so you can use it. It's a challenge for us because the tipping fee costs are looming ahead of us. And that is an economic number that we public works directors and solid waste directors are struggling with. How do we address this and then get the electeds on board? Right. And so one of the takeaways we hope, and I'm seeing some of us, a handful of us in the Alamance County area, is we'd like to be able to, you know, have some sense of hope. What is it that we can do through CRA, funding sources? I mean, we're looking to try to band together to see what we can do. So help us out here.
So yes. No would like to.
You've already started. The conversation has to begin to take place. We have to put things on the table, the good, the bad, the ugly. What does strategic materials need? What does your MRF need? What does your landfill cost? We can't sit around and bemoan the situation. We have to attack it, and we want to. Some problems are easier than others. When Jennifer called me, she said, this is going to cost me a fortune next year. What can we do? We figured it out. Okay. We had the right folks in the room. Sunoco was there to help us. Okay. Caleb and I, it was a bit more difficult. It took 3 years, but neither one of us gave up. We knew it was the right thing to do. Glass does not belong in a landfill. Okay, keep that in mind. Glass does not belong in a landfill. How do we bring it to market? Open the conversation with strategic materials, with NCDEQ, with CRA. We want to sit down, discuss it, find the solutions. A lot of times the solutions are at hand. We've just ignored them, whether they be existing assets that you own, methods that you could modify, procedures that could be changed, philosophies and ideas. We're in a whole new world. Let's work together.
I'd like to speak to that.
from the perspective of a county government. So, many of Rowan County's 9 municipalities, some have done away with glass, and others are having that conversation. Our convenience centers are going to be a sort of catch-all, a backup plan for that. So what we're doing on a county level is to build out that infrastructure. Now it's a double-edged sword, because once curbside goes away and they say, well, the county will take it, then it's cost avoidance. And so the messaging also on our part from the county is that this is a temporary situation in the recycling world, and that we encourage them to always have their eye on that convenience, because without that convenience, curbside, we're going to lose a lot of material, all the materials. So we're focused now on messaging, on helping those municipalities within our jurisdiction to think many years down the road, and also provide them sort of a solution for right now. So I don't know if that's helpful.
I think that's very helpful, and I would say as well, big picture, one of the reasons why glass is on everyone's mind is because commodity prices for other materials are at a low. So it's a heavy material, so it's come to everyone's question: do we keep glass in? And as Caleb mentioned, we do encourage folks to really keep that long-term view. Market prices may be at a very low point right now, but they have always come back. We have been tracking market prices at the state of North Carolina for 25 years or so. They have been low before, and this low, maybe we're a little bit sustained in that low point than in years past, but they will return. So we do like to encourage folks to take that long view as much as possible. We understand, that there are some real cost centers around recycling in general, and that is forcing the glass question. So what I would say, sort of back to one of the early questions, please reach out to us, reach out to Bill at Strategic, others to sit down with you and really go through, the individual situation that you and your fellow communities are having, and we'll help you walk through some of those decision points, bring to the table the data that we have at the state level to help inform that decision-making process, but we're happy to help you. Yes, Bianca in the back from Wake County. Okay. Okay, I'm going to repeat the question, and then Mike, if you can come up to use the mic. Bianca from Wake County asks, what is the ABC Commission doing to educate customers about the law and the requirement to recycle if you own one of those licensed their beverage containers? And good luck, Mike.
Thank you. So unfortunately, they've never put a lot of teeth into the law. What happens is anytime that you have to reapply for your license every May, part of the paperwork they look for is your recycling plan, naming your service provider. Anybody that has a brand new license has to find a provider and fill out that paperwork. So we get calls on a weekly basis from new bars and restaurants that are opening up asking who are the service providers in our area. And then every year around May, we get a flood of calls for people that are filling out their paperwork. Now, as far as enforcement, the enforcement officers do not walk in and have the recycling law at the top of their list. What they typically do is if there's an issue where you're serving underage, you're, different problems, that's just another hit they'll add to the list to make it more difficult for you to get your license back. That was just the way that they chose to handle it, but that's the truth of the situation. It's not ever a primary violation, it's always an add-on.
There's a brief follow-up to that regarding the sort of the structure of the ALE. Is the ALE attached to each county's ABC units? In other words, could we, as recycling people, go to the people on our county ALE person and say, hey, we want this to fire level?
I think, so the question is, can individual communities go to their local ALE office and say, hey, we think enforcement around recycling requirements for ABC customers and licensing is important. Did I characterize that correctly? So I would say, sure. You know, I don't know what kind of listening ear those folks might have on this issue, but if you want to advocate for something, I would, you know, not discourage you from that. You know, from the state's perspective, as Mike said, certainly, you know, the ABC Commission, you know, recycling is not their specialty, nor is it their priority. So, you know, they do the best they can. There's a mechanism in place on the application for licensing to make sure that folks check the box, and those businesses who claim that there are no recycling services for glass or beverage containers, they request an exemption. And to the Commission's credit, and as that implementation of that law was being designed, they do send those applications for exemptions to our office, and Mike gets the pleasure of looking at them all and determining whether there is in fact a legitimate reason to exempt them from the requirement to recycle. I don't think we've ever said that there's an exemption that is justified, because to all y'all's credit in part, and the folks with BevCon and others that are doing hauling operations servicing these customers, you know, there's either a hauler that's willing to take that material to a recycling facility, or some drop-off facilities are allowing ABC customers, because of this law, to use their facilities as a drop point. So that's it in a nutshell. But if anyone, anytime advocacy comes up, of course, I can't tell you to do that as a state employee, but it is, you're right. If you think that, you know, there's not being enough done on a certain issue, or not enough funding for a certain issue, then that's certainly all y'all's prerogative, and to work with CRA, as Mary's nodding at me from the hall, you know, to start addressing those issues. Other questions? Yes.
After on whether classes are covered or not?
We have MRFs small and big in North Carolina, and all of them except glass -1. So
we've got MRFs that hand pick the glass out. We've got big MRFs like Sunoco that do it mechanically. If the desire is there, it can be done.
Oh, so for the folks online, the question to the floor was, does it matter the size of the MRF whether the facility is able to accept glass? And essentially the answer is no. In North Carolina, at least, we have examples of both large and small MRFs that handle glass. So their technology, of course, ranges and how they pull it out. But they all are able to do it. Teresa? So the question is, are there other alternative markets, for example, glass mulch, or other sort of art applications for glass cullet, and are we doing anything to support that? there are options for that. One thing that, as you might have heard in Mike's presentation earlier today, even the alternative markets for glass require clean glass. So it can't be so there will still be a cost to processing that glass and making sure that the contamination is out. So no chicken bones, no labels, all of these things are issues. And so it's not that it can't happen, and it's certainly something that we encourage folks to look at if they're having really large challenges with transportation costs, for example, to get it to strategic or to market in general. However, don't look at these alternatives as potentially a silver bullet, because you're still going to have cost issues around how to, making sure that that glass is clean and that you have the ability to process it to get it to the spec needed.
And I hope you picked it up from the walk today and from strategic. A lot of the different markets for glass are kind of complementary. So there's stuff that we don't use that the fiberglass guys will use. There's stuff that neither of us will use that the abrasives guys will use. So actually having all those markets available to someone like strategic actually makes a location more viable. But it's no one of them would be big enough to support a facility of this size on its own. But it helps. They all have quality requirements, but all of our quality requirements are different. And our color requirements can be different. So, I view a lot of these as complementary and helping keep glass overall out of landfill. Now, they may be more in the kind of the reuse rather than the recycle mode, but it all helps someone like strategic be viable as an operation to have other outlets other than, let's say, the two big ones, which would be container and fiber.
No, I was just going to add, and I think through several of the questions, I want to reiterate, I think one of the best things to take away is every situation is going to be unique and specific. And I think the first best thing is to try to have a conversation with any one of us, and we're all talking on a regular basis. I get calls every week from people in municipalities far and wide that sometimes we actually make a great connection and like, hey, I know somebody in Eastern Washington can get to come pick up the glass. We're studying a variety of different regional solutions across the country because the problem in New England is very different than the problem in the Southeast, versus the problem in different places where transportation markets may be an issue. And in Northern Virginia, where we're located right now, we're working on an aggregation site. So it's almost like a secondary place to, if transportation is the real cost, then maybe we need to study an aggregation site that's a regional solution for people that are further away from the primary site. So there's a range of different things that can be done to recover the glass. And as you saw, there is a range of different products that can use the glass that come down. It's not all necessarily think of it as higher quality, lower quality, but sometimes it's size, sometimes it's clarity, all of that different things. So engaged, ask questions. We're trying to do as much as we can to provide education and resources. And lastly, when the media call, finish the statement. It's not just X dropped glass or dropped glass is the problem. It's fill in the gap with the entire solution. So because it's always not just one materials issue, it could be a systemic issue. And usually if there's a contamination issue, there's two things that are interacting, not just the one. Okay.
So I know we've been talking about recycling, but reusing with the glass. Has there been a tolerance for glass reuse, like sanitizing? Has there been an uptick in that?
There are some pilot. I don't know if I want to call them any more than pilot programs right now, but there are some jurisdictions that are working on reuse programs. Again, you need to complete the circle between the end market, right? So I'll give you the example. In Oregon, there is a refillable bottle program. It's glass, the same glass as glass. It's a little bit more robust. So in your regulatory scheme, you can't necessarily say, this is an issue that you may have heard about. California's doing a big circular economy bill, but sometimes if you don't quite get it right, and I think that's what happened, there's a little bit of origin story to the North Carolina ABC recovery thing, that it happened so quickly that they didn't really think of what was happening on the backside of the law other than just the collection. But anyhow, you need to make sure that you get somebody who's going to use the containers and a facility that can do the processing, the rewash. But then that's completely recyclable, and then you get kind of a cooperative thing going between the craft. So it's a craft brewery, a collection of craft breweries in Oregon that went in together with somebody who's going to do the processing and the washing and the sanitizing to turn it back around. But it is happening, and Denver is actually looking at taking the Oregon model and doing that. So it's picking up, and as you hear more about refillable options or things that, think of all of the material that is delivered to people's doorsteps now that they used to go to the store to get, right? So there are opportunities there, and there are programs that are pushing it. I wouldn't say that there's anything robust enough yet that would take over, and some of these might be really major metropolitan area delivery things. I mean, there's a concentration of population that you have to, economies of scale that have to be, but there are some.
And that works for the returnable stuff too, because it kind of has to be within a geography that works. It has to be small.
Well, the reason why I thought it was there's a deodorant company that has mailback system. So you can do
like the TerraCycle thing?
Yes,
yeah.
but it's specific to that, just that. So it's just but to be that, I didn't know from a graph. If more companies.
Like Scott said, it's more pilot type stuff right now, but certainly, how would I say it? There's almost a little bit of a throwback in the sense that, Amazon and things like that have kind of changed people's view of shopping, and there's Instacart and Peapod and all these other companies that bring groceries to your door. So stuff like that has kind of brought people almost back to the idea of, the milkman showing up every day and bringing you milk, right? So there is almost a kind of as we move forward, we're kind of going back to, so things like refillable and stuff delivered to your door is changing that kind of mentality. So, well, I think it's too early to tell. I think it's very much.
While beer goes down, I didn't talk about overall market trends, right? So part of the problem nationally, beer's down, beer consumption's down. Beer, yeah. Maybe not here. Thank you all, right? Right? Maybe not here. Some of my, like, when they interviewed me for the glass job, I was like, what are you talking about? My favorite things come in glass. I don't know what everybody. No, but overall, nationally, beer sales are down. Beer is half of glass containers. Okay. What is going up in our latest data is food is up, distilled spirits is up, specialty beverages are up. Wine has been flat over the past several years. So if we can get those beer guys going back to glass from cans, then that would be a good thing.
We've had a few questions. I think I saw Tori from Greensboro first. Tori Carley.
In this region.
How many? Wait, hold on. How many jobs come out of this facility in particular?
This region of the world, there's about 2,400 jobs that depend on the products that come out of this facility. The jobs at our DAW, the jobs at the fiberglass industry, the jobs at the reflective bead industry are all supported from raw material that will come into this plant and leave. Your bottles. Those 2,400 people went to work this morning and they're touching the raw material that we made from your bottles. Did that answer your question?
There's another question in this side. Yeah. Oh, go for it.
They'll just have a great answer that I could give, but why one reason I should choose glass.
Besides, it tastes better.
Yeah, so, right, so yeah, you're talking to glass folks. So the question is, are there reasons to give to craft brewers who are trying to decide what kind of packaging they're going to use? And jobs is one, taste is another.
Well, it's not, I mean, think of why fiberglass is used for, I was thinking about in your presentation, there is an insulating quality to the glass, right? And so that is, now I understand sometimes the lighter can may be able to travel further, okay? And so as the craft brewers try to go big and they try to go from their regional footprint to a national footprint, they're more likely to try to start putting some of their product in can to get it further away from their markets. But I think you can talk about North Carolina as a glass, a positive state, right? Or we'll come up with the right language to choose glass and choose North Carolina glass and get the North Carolina craft breweries to focus on it for the on-premise folks that are in the market.
And I'll also add, especially for your craft brewers, the plastic sleeves that they're putting on aluminum cans are problematic.
So you want to explain that? Yeah, explain.
So I had one of my recyclers sent a picture that came from, so it's a MRF that sent it to a company that takes down the aluminum can, makes new cans. The gunk from the plastic sleeves, they had a high concentration of plastic sleeves. It melted in their furnace at a different rate than the aluminum and created a gummy mess. And they had to shut it down. They had to shut down the equipment and clean out all of the gummy mess that was in.
So just to follow up on that real quick. So, you know, we have seen this as some craft brewers are trying to look for cheaper and more sort of other packaging options for their product. With the aluminum can, they can buy a plain can and then sleeve wrap it with that plastic. And that's exactly what's the problem, because it's the entire can is being wrapped and in a plastic layer, which then can really gum up the furnaces at the aluminum smelters. Our office, and in partnership with some waste reduction partners folks, who I think there are a few in the room, we are working with those teams to try to identify some solutions for that, and trying to, you know, help encourage folks to understand what the impact of their packaging choices are on the downstream recycling system. Other questions? Blair.
This is with respect to market share and differentiating yourself. You did Sierra Nevada, will be a big factor. We're a zero waste manufacturing company. Are they looking at find themselves as a brand whereby they pay more for higher recycled content?
So the question is, especially in the large craft brewers in North Carolina, Sierra Nevada as an example, are they encouraging the marketplace in a certain way? I think we got a couple of
so is the question that, you know, are our brands that we supply bottles to willing to pay more for recycled content?
Especially when they're marketing themselves in the beer manufacturing. On all this part, and they're a leader in the DEACS factory now.
It's an ongoing discussion, right? A lot of the brands are, you know, setting targets and going towards the point where they want to be, you know, at the high level as they possibly can. And we want to support them in that. But again, as you know, you heard earlier, the demand isn't being met for the recycled content. So, you know, there's a lot of work that we need to do to kind of get that up so we can deliver it for them. in terms of, how we would make the economics work, that goes back to the earlier comments that we can't really kind of get into today. But, we just need to try and make that whole supply chain as efficient as it possibly can so that we can get it through and get the rates up and make it work for everybody, which I think is, in general, when I'm at these sort of things, it's usually where the discussion ends up is there's certain elements of the supply chain where people feel like they're carrying the can for the whole thing because it's not making sense. But it is something that we have to work together. It's an ongoing discussion, and it can be very much regionalized depending on where the brewer is, where we are, to how we can work together to try and to do that. It's discussions that we're having certainly with the brands to try and encourage the recycling in that area, to get more raw material available for the recyclers in that area so that we get more. But it's not as easy as just throwing cash at the end of it. It isn't really going to fix. So what we're really looking for here is structural change, something that can actually make this process work and work efficiently for everybody. And until we start kind of getting to that phase, I'm not sure that we'd even, you might get a short-term bump, but I don't think it would really last.
I'll add to that, separate from the glass a little bit. Sierra Nevada is heading up an effort in the Asheville area, and I've been working with them to set up a consolidation point for brewery recyclables. The problem is a lot of these breweries are small and they don't have enough. It's the same items as plastic wrap, polypropylene bags, Mylar bags, and cardboard boxes, but none of them has enough to be attractive for the hard to recycle material. Nobody wants them. So they are heading up an effort to be kind of the consolidation point for breweries in Western North Carolina, where everybody can send their plastic wrap, their Mylar wrap, their polypropylene bags to one place, to where it is now attractive to a recycling company. So I would definitely say, from what I'm seeing, they're definitely doing what they can.
Yeah, Bob?
Liz, off or on? Doesn't matter. They run through the crusher. The glass bottle runs through the crusher.
On glass.
So Murph's in the room. Where would that lid end up? So poor Patrick's having to walk his way up to the podium. But generally speaking, the lid itself on a glass bottle oftentimes is metal, right? But the size of it is a challenge, right? So it's going to fall through. So, but I'll let my expert Murph guy tell us.
Thank you, Bob. Are you going to charge us less? So, chances are the glass isn't going to go through. The bottle's not going to make it through our system intact, so it's going to break. So if it breaks, is the portion of the glass that's still on there going to get recovered by our magnet and go to out with our steel? More than likely, depending on the weight of the glass. If it's too heavy for the magnet to pick it up, it won't. But if that bit of metal makes it too strategic, you've got plenty of magnets out here, right? So I think I'm kind of agnostic on it.
A lot of it's not ferrous, so it's more eddy currents rather than magnets.
Yeah,
two eddy currents.
Wait, I got it.
Okay.
I'm a say on. Is it garbage? It's not a single use straw. So it needs to say on, so at least it makes it through some of it, more so than not.
Keep them on.
Keep them on.
Well, that's what all of the, I'm sorry. When it comes to that, you're talking about really the first priority is consumer education on that, right? And you want to read the habit and keep the habit going. And all of the plastic bottle caps are supposed to be on. And so if you're teaching on, I think that's the number one. It overrides the difference between, marginal.
I think Mel is reluctantly looking at me, but I was going to turn to our education and outreach specialist here, who's dealt a lot with how to educate on the issues, whether it's technically recyclable or not, is not always the best end answer. So am I talking for you? Here comes Mel.
I think everybody's already answered.
really well. Everybody answered this really well, which is what we tell the public is the thing that's simplest for them to understand and stay consistent with. That is often different than the technical answer about the electromagnets and the eddy currents and all that kind of stuff, right? Because that's too much for them to take in. So when it comes to caps, just tell people, screw them on and keep them with your container. It's a nice, simple message and they get it. The real answer from, you know, the industry insiders is we're agnostic on this because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter that much. But we're never going to say that to the public, right? Because that's the last thing they want. When from an environmental education standpoint, when you're talking to the public, what they want is a hard and fast answer. They want a yes or they want a no. So on this one, caps stay on and go ahead and put them in your bin. That's it.
Screw 'em, Bob.
Is that a good drop the mic moment?
This is being recorded.
Oh, this is being recorded, so everybody behave. All right. All right. So we're getting close to our hard stop at 2. As we got about 7 more minutes. Does anyone else have other questions they want to throw up at the panel or just in general? Yes.
I'd like to take this opportunity just to have everybody here that's involved in the discussion close up the loop. I think everybody might be surprised how little time it takes your recycled glass to become a new bottle again. So starting with the gentleman from Sunoco, if you pick up recycling on the curbside on Monday, how many days do it take before it comes to our plant?
So for the benefit of the folks online, I'm sorry to suffer this, but the question to the panel is how long does it take from consumer point, putting it in the recycling container all the way through the system?
So just to be clear, Sunoco, we're not in collections. So, but I take your point. So if it's delivered on a Monday, more than likely by Tuesday or Wednesday, worst case scenario, we'll turn the full inventory over in a week's time, but that's absolute worst case scenario. So I'd say more than likely within 48 to 72 hours that bottle is here.
Right. And then Manny, front of the plant, the product that you received today, how long is it before it's ready to ship to your customer?
We would probably process that in about 8 hours. We get a truck and it goes to RDOT and they use it almost the next day.
Can y'all kind of run that through the system? So Bill, can you repeat what he said and then we'll pass it to RDOT?
Manny said it would take 8 hours. I was going to agree with Patrick and say any material that comes in here is processed in less than a week.
Patrick's material is so good, he goes right through. We're still not going to pay him anymore.
And we don't carry a whole lot of inventory of color, so yeah, it would be you know, at most probably on the ground for a few days at our site, and you know, depends on the size of the furnace, but the dwell time in the furnace is usually, you know, a day and a half. So within that, then it would be a bottle, and from there, then it kind of depends on, you know, the seasonality of whatever we're producing and the pull from our customers is how quickly it will end up back on the shelf. That one's probably harder to answer, truthfully, because you know, there's obviously glass bottle inventory and then there's a filler inventory before it gets delivered to. Sure.
Sorry.
So just adding a little bit of buffer time in there, what I'm hearing is, you know, from a consumer point to drop it in the recycling container at most a month before it's back into a bottle. So that is a pretty compelling story. So, you know, hats off to the folks who do all that work for us. So thank you. We already have some folks sort of taking the liberty to call it a day. So thank you for coming. Thank you all for participating in this great discussion. Thank you to our speakers.